Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we completed this grand bridge to access our bauxite deposit. So today, we'll extract that bauxite and refine it into aluminum, the core ingredient for a couple key productions that will get us up into orbit. So I suppose that makes today our first space program episode. Without further ado then, let's get into it. Alright, today's to-dos. It's Aluminum Day. Before we get too far into aluminum production, though, we should check out 4.2. So, as previewed, I think last episode, between episodes, update 4.2 has come out, and it's 1 to the right of the decimal, so you know it's a big one, and they've added a few cool things. We, I think, already talked about the waypoint restrictions that will give us more control over how and where our train networks operate, and I think that will be a helpful tool for us for managing train traffic. They've also, speaking of trains, added universal wagons, which for a small drop in capacity are able to accept all three types of goods: loose, flat, and fluid. They've also added new ramps and obsoleted the old version, which we have all over the place in our current build, so something we should check out. And in planning mode, the look is very different now, and I think much better. So I'm pretty excited about that. So we'll check all of this out. I want to let the game just like run for a couple minutes and make sure that the update, there's a lot of other small calculation changes that have gone in behind the background, and I don't want to like dive into aluminum and then realize, oh, we actually needed to fix something from the update. So we'll let it run for just a couple minutes and make sure nothing glaringly obvious catches on fire. But then we get into aluminum. So we have a mining setup we need to build. We'll need to do all the processing. We'll set up an export, and we might get to building composite panels, which is the first thing we're going to use aluminum for, but let's see how the game goes. So we'll talk through the aluminum supply chain in a moment, but let's start by just letting the game run for a bit and taking a peek at 4.2. So here we go, letting it run for a bit. The other cool thing that they've done is a complete redesign, I think, of all of the products in the game. They have new models, and apparently this is where a lot of the performance optimization from this patch is supposed to come from. The rendering is made a lot simpler and more efficient through all of these redesigns, which is cool. Performance is great, obviously, but I also kind of like the look of the new models. They are, I don't know, super interesting. There's a few I've already noticed where there's like more color. So for example, tofu used to be quite bland. Now at least it has a bright green container, and suddenly this is not such a beige factory anymore. There's a few others. I think, yeah, the Electronics 3 is like a much more vibrant red now, to my eyes at least. So there's a few changes I'm still getting used to, but I like them overall. I think it's pretty cool. So, oh yeah, look at that. Snacks are bright orange now. Neat. So one of the other things that I'm sure you've already picked up on, planning mode now actually looks like a blueprint. Like it looks like, I don't know, some architecture drafting board stuff. It's kind of cool. I love this vibe. This is going to be so much easier for like being able to actually see, especially, I think the worst thing in the world was planning mode on rock background, right? It was gray on gray. That looks a lot more distinct. So very excited for that. So in fact, what does it look like if we unpause? There you go. It's distinct, even though it is still blueprinted. Let's repause. I don't actually want to build that there. Cool. So that's nice and is going to be very handy. Yeah, as I think I mentioned when we walk through the aluminum production chain in just a moment. So nice change there. The other one is to ramps. So if you go to the vehicle menu, at this point, you will no longer see any of the 3 old versions of ramps. What you have now is a tool like this that will allow you to recreate basically the same thing over here, except you can drag and extend it as far as you like. So gone are the days of I have a bunch of crossings in a row, so I'm going to have just like a series of bumpy little ramps, and our trucks are going to get seasick going over consecutive ramps. You can also do a tall extended one, so you can go up 2 levels, just like the largest version of the old ramp as well. The one difference, I don't know if it's a trade-off necessarily, that I've seen already is that they are 1 tile wider on either side, which has some implications for our road building, I suppose. Shouldn't be too disruptive, but we, of course, have been using this 8 tile wide road now that fits within the ramp, but does not contain the ramp. So something to consider as we go forward, but I think it'll be all right. I'm definitely not gonna go around and replace all these, and I want to get rid of these crossovers here anyway. So we were, if anything, on the downswing of the number of ramps we have around the base, need around the base. So that is also, I think, a pretty cool change that I am on board with. One other thought, I guess, is that you didn't have to have any approach space before with the old ones. Now there's sort of like an entrance space that can't be occluded for the ramp, just like there is for a railroad crossing. So one other build restriction that shouldn't be a problem, but is maybe worth pointing out. The other cool thing, universal wagons. So a universal wagon 2 has a throughput or a cargo capacity of 360 versus 480 over here on our hopper 2s. Are they, not that it's a huge deal, they're slightly lighter than a hopper wagon as well. I suppose that's probably just roughly relative to the capacity. So neat. These are situationally useful now. I'm imagining, I haven't tested these out yet, I'm looking forward to it. But where I could actually see them being most helpful is like really early on. So the issue with trains in general, right, is that they require a pretty significant investment up front, and you have to place all those tracks and the train facility and all the productions that go into it and that first train for a very early base. Like, it can be kind of expensive. If you're doing all of that for exactly one train line or one good type, right, you limit where all you're able to take advantage of it. So I think my first train will probably be a versatile train in most playthroughs going forward, so that I can use it for a handful of different things and get a better return on that significant investment. I also think, for example, still at this point in the playthrough, there are a couple exceptions where flexibility will be helpful. So in like our turbine train network, for example, not helpful. We have multiple copies of each type of train in here, right? So if you have specialization or high volume, generally, really, I don't think they are worth it at all. Like, we could, instead of 30 specialized trains, I guess we would need something like 40 unspecialized trains just to carry the same stuff. Not ideal, right? But in, for example, our Silicon Ridge network, I think we only have 1 fluid train in here, and it doesn't run all the time. It's in here somewhere, I know, because yeah, it runs hydrogen, right? But that's all it does. There's not much else for it to do. So if hydrogen is sorted, it's just chilling in the bay, taking up space and being idle. If this were instead a flexible train, capable of handling hydrogen when it came up, but it would then also have the ability during its otherwise significant downtime to chip in and help out with other stuff. I think the same is true in here for the St. Charles manufacturing one as well. There's like 1 fluid train. Now he's doing all the chlorine, and that actually is kind of higher volume, so maybe a bad specific example, but the concept I think is sound. If you have occasional stuff that you don't want full-on dedicated capacity for, flexibility is potentially superior, or at least a trade-off worth considering. So that is, I think, a cool new tool for us. Always excited when we get to make interesting decisions, and that's an interesting decision with trade-offs in either direction. So nothing seems to be on fire so far. I vote we dive into the aluminum supply chain. All right, so let's talk about that flexible, lightweight metal that we make everything from airplanes to beer cans out of, aluminum. And by the way, that's how it's spelled in game, so that's how I'll be pronouncing it. I've seen your comments and apologize. I know you've had a tough week, and it brings me no pleasure to say it, but aluminum is spelled with 1 I, and it's never coming home. Both are true, but neither is my fault, so don't shoot the messenger. Apologies to our friends across the pond, but I digress. So, Aluminum is our first new production chain in a while. I think it's probably good to walk through it in a little bit more detail to familiarize ourselves with it, so we're armed with the right context to decide where and how we want to build it. So this is it here, aluminum. It's used in a handful of things, two of which we'll use pretty much right away, two of which a little bit further down the road. The first two, this is composite panels. You mix with some steel and plastic. Composite panels go into the composite core basic, which is, with a little bit of extra materials over here, the thing that makes station parts. You mix it with some older school solar cells, the ones we already have access to. We'll need to set up a production for that eventually. We also mix it with this chemical fuel, which is the other thing that we're going to use aluminum for here. We mix in some fuel gas and ammonia in equal parts. This increased need for ammonia, by the way, is one of the reasons I was prioritizing scaling up our fertilizer factory. I think that's what we will probably export it from. But then, yeah, these are the key parts, both of which take aluminum to go into these station parts basic, and these are required to get us into orbit, or at least to build a space station in orbit. So the other two places we'll use them, they're helpful for the more advanced solar cells once we unlock those, and they are a pretty significant volume of the consumer electronics, the last product that once unlocked we will supply to our base, to our citizens for more Unity. We already have the infrastructure set up for this, but we obviously don't supply it yet. So how do you make aluminum? You actually start, as I think we know, all the way back at bauxite. That's what we built this long bridge out here towards this mine for, right? And you'll see I've already started to sketch out a mining setup. The first thing we do with bauxite, as we do with most ores, particularly the advanced ones, or the advanced uses of ores at least, in Captain of Industry, is we crush it. This is a 1-to-1 crush, and we come out some bauxite powder. Bauxite powder then goes into a chem plant 2, where it is mixed with some brine, actually. A little bit of brine, and it makes hydrated alumina and red mud. Interesting stuff. It's worth pointing out this 72 is consistent here on the input, but we cut down to half volume of our core product that we're most interested in, this hydrated alumina. We'll come back to the red mud in a moment. It's important, but it's mostly a waste product. So hydrated alumina is what we're most interested in, and we take that forward by putting it into a rotary kiln to, I suppose, dehydrate it into normal alumina, or non-hydrated alumina. Just like our other use for the gas kiln, we have the ability to use either fuel gas or hydrogen to fuel it. This is how we make cement today. And based on our choice of fuel, we either spit out some waste carbon dioxide or steam depleted. Just like we do in cement, I'm gonna probably use fuel gas today because we make any hydrogen we would use from fuel gas, and in doing so we emit the CO2. So we might as well just save ourselves the effort and use the less refined fuel. From there, we have a 3-to-2 reduction in volume down to alumina. And at this point, we've gone from 72 bauxite to 24 alumina. So it's a pretty compressive manufacturing process. And we put that into an aluminum cell. This is a new building for us, and it's a chunky boy. Big fella. It is, in some senses, like a glorified arc furnace. A simpler one, fortunately. But it takes a ton of power and goes through some graphite rods as well in order to spit out molten aluminum and a little bit more waste CO2. By the way, CO2, need for graphite input. So one of the things that I like to include in an aluminum factory is a chem plant 2, just to recycle that CO2 and provide some, but definitely not all, of the graphite that we'll need. So each one of these takes 6, right? But we emit 18 and 6, that is not 144. So we'll definitely be net importing graphite, which is great. We definitely produce more graphite than we are capable of consuming, or at least we're capable of producing more graphite than we are currently consuming. We overflow most of that to CO2 emission, which is how we end up with a half-decent amount still of air pollution. I digress. So, molten aluminum then, as you might guess, goes into finally a metal caster. And this is the same building, right, that we use for the impure copper stage, or if we were still producing iron, the molten iron into iron stage, it's that final casting step. And out come the ingots. Now there's a couple other things along the way here that we are interested in, and one of them actually is molten aluminum. So we can use molten aluminum, as you may have seen, not just to make aluminum, but also, in a small fraction, to make molten titanium alloy. In fact, this is not an optional thing. This is the only way to make molten titanium alloy, which is required for titanium alloy, which is required for the most advanced of the space program parts. So we absolutely have to have molten aluminum as part of our titanium production in the future. We're not going to do this today, but it's worth keeping in mind that this is something we're going to have to build around in the future. And that means we can do a couple things. Sometimes I like to co-locate my aluminum and titanium productions so that I can just sort of send some overflow via a balancer directly over into the next factory, and that works just fine. The other thing you could do is just build a small amount of aluminum production at your titanium factory specifically just to produce this. That can be a little overkill depending on how much your titanium is scaled up. You know, you're going to still have to have at least one aluminum cell to be producing quite a bit. And the other solution that we finally have now in Update 4 that I'm kind of excited to use again is a molten wagon. So we have been looking, of course, as always, for excuses to use molten trains because they look so neat. Where's our glass export? There it is. And right now, the only one that we've really been able to have a reasonable use for is over here. Our molten glass overflow comes over for recycling in our nuclear facility. So I think we have another decent excuse to do a molten wagon. So I'll probably take overflow molten aluminum and export it. The other thing that has a future use to keep in mind is alumina. So alumina can go into sapphire wafers. What's a sapphire wafer? A sapphire wafer made in a crystallizer. This is the thing we use for the microchip wafer production. A sapphire wafer is mixed with diamond paste, fancy, and ethanol in equal parts to come out and make a bit of lens in a lens polisher. The heck is that? That is one of the two things, along with diamonds, that you mix with electronics 3 to make electronics 4. So we're not doing this today, but we're doing it like soon. So something else to keep in mind, we're again either going to have to set up a separate aluminum production somewhere else to create all of this, or we could simply have overflow for our alumina where we export that to the rest of the base. And then the last thing to talk about is this red mud. So as I told you, it's a waste product. You could just dump it. I don't suggest it. It's quite polluting. And you can, fitting a theme of many waste products in this game, you can recycle it or treat it down into slag by adding a bit of limestone and, in this case, some seawater. You can also, if you're willing to spend the acid, reduce the amount that turns into slag and get a third of it as crushed iron ore, which is kind of interesting. Crushed iron ore, of course, is the thing that we put into our various stages of blast furnace to get out molten iron and turn to steel. At least in our case, you can turn it into iron as well. It's not a huge volume. We make 36 red mud out of 72 bauxite, so you need 2 of these for one of these. You get out a total of 8 crushed ore, which will run a blast furnace 1/6 of the time if you're producing aluminum at top speed. Not a huge deal. And I would actually argue, as cool as it is to have essentially free iron ore, this isn't actually an obvious decision in every playthrough. The limestone's the same either way. The red mud's the same either way. Who cares about a difference in slag volume? What you're really trading is 12 acid for 4 crushed iron ore, which said another way is, 2 sulfur? Is that 2 sulfur and 10 water? Mostly the sulfur is what matters. 2 sulfur or 4 iron ore? What's most valuable to you? really depends on your build. And sulfur is one of those things where, depending on what your fuel source is, for example, or how much you're scrubbing exhaust, if you've moved away from a lot of exhaust producing stuff, like sulfur can be more or less valuable depending on how your base is construed, and it can change over time in the game. So I don't think it's always an obvious choice, but I think we're going to do it in this particular playthrough because, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's a fun extra ball to try to keep up in the air in our design. So I think we're going to make it work. Just wanted to call out, I don't think it's always something you have to do if you don't want to. All right, so that's how aluminum works. Let's now maybe take some time to think about where we want to build it, considering all of the considerations, I guess, that I just laid out here around what we're going to have to bring in, what we're going to have to export, and where we want to consume the aluminum. And I'll just cut to the chase, lead with the answer here, and say we're going to do it, I think, on this corner out here on Silicon Ridge for a couple of reasons. The first of which is just organizationally. This is kind of how we have everything built already. This is the island where we do a lot of our sort of basic refinement, a lot of our smelting materials, if you consider this and the steel factory just across the way, right? This is basically where we make all of our initial refined goods that then at a later stage get turned into our final products out here on St. Charles in our various finished goods manufactories, so to speak. The other island that we have, right, is all just raw resource extraction, essentially. So it fits thematically, but it's not just about theme and the fact that it feels nice to organize things that way. It's about, that means we have some parallel infrastructure that we can already take advantage of, right? So for example, we're producing more graphite than we can actually consume out here already because we do all of the exhaust scrubbing from our primary productions already. That will easily satisfy our net import of graphite that we're going to require for all these machines. We also have a water hookup out here so that we can make brine, because we're going to have to make salt into brine. That's how we do these things out here these days. And the other thing that we'll have going for us is the easy pattern and export infrastructure already for sending via one of these transshipment warehouses that we already have basically already lined up. So it's going to be simplest to do it out here. And yeah, there's a bit of a train line involved. And in fact, I'll show you, I'm thinking about doing something long and windy and fun. But there's always going to be a long train line involved, right? Like, this is how it starts. Even if it were built right here on Silicon Ridge, which is not a good idea, or on St. Charles, but even if it were built like right at the end of this bridge, it's still a long trip. Like, it's gonna be a train delivery anyway. That doesn't get much worse by making it a longer one. I also think it's a cool excuse to build like a specific dedicated train line, and I want to use the nuclear train. So I feel like this is a bit excessive. You certainly don't have to build it this way if you don't want to, but I think I want to. So I think we're going to run a very long nuclear train all the way out and around, and because it's a long train, we don't really want it on the main line, and so much of our economy already flows through this bridge already, even though traffic looks fine right now. I think it would be better to give it its own dedicated bridge in parallel right here, something like this. And then just have it cut across here somehow. I don't know if this needs relocated or not. It's probably just an aesthetic thing. But then it can come all the way out here along the coastline, because what else are we going to do with this? And come out here and loop around. So that's what I'm thinking. There are a couple outstanding questions still, right? So let's go through the materials. Export, we'll do a transship, just as we do with every other good here on Silicon Ridge. As I mentioned, I do want to have the molten aluminum export as well. I don't know where we're going to do titanium, but we'll send it from here to there via train. And we'll have to bring in the graphite, as I said, most of it produced locally, I'm sure. Alumina, this, as I mentioned, is one of the goods that I want to make sure that we export, just sort of thinking ahead to the future. But we'll do an overflow only here. So we'll make our sapphire wafers in the future for lenses out of that. And we're going to have to import salt to make brine, I mentioned. We'll have to import fuel gas in order to run our rotary kilns. And then we have to decide what we want to do with red mud. So we could do this locally, right? We could bring in acid. We actually have an acid pipeline over there. And we have certainly some limestone available on this island. And we already, can dump slag at least. I probably wouldn't want to run a belt all the way out to the single slag collection we already have here. It would require us to have another export here. And actually it would require us to have 2 more exports, right? Because we'd have to send the iron ore crushed across the way over there to the new steel factory, or we'd have to build some steel processing capacity here, which even the version of that is most compatible, graphite's already here, limestone's already gonna be here in this situation, water too. We'd still be adding arc furnace production over here. It probably wouldn't be super necessary, even if you went with the arc furnace 1 to avoid the water loop and you were okay with a smaller production. It's just not quite as efficient as just sending it over to the steel factory that already does all of this. Plus, we'd also have to be exporting steel in addition to slag. We could just skip a step and export the red mud directly over here, though, because we already have everything we need. Limestone's already here. That's what these are for here. This is what I think we're going to do with it. Limestone's already here. Easy, right? Acid is not produced out here, but we are exporting significant net sulfur. And in fact, it's backed up. We're going to have to do something about that one way or another. So we might as well use some of it. Bit of a working buffer here, but with some water. And Lord knows we have enough water out here. This is full despite the fact that we're exporting. So we can make acid locally. We're already exporting slag. Easy. And then we can just, with priority, insert this crushed iron ore, like right here, I guess, via a balancer. So I think that's going to be the move. We'll of course need a fluid train to run things over here, but we already have a slot where that would work just fine. This even happens to be the electrified side of the track. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be the move. Still need to, of course, get everything hooked up here, but the play will be, I think, double the initial throughput that I sketched out when we walked through things earlier. I think we'll do 2 times 72, so 2 crushers means 2 chem plant 2s, which means 2 rotary kilns, and then 2 aluminum cells, plus the metal casters that go along with it. So we'll remove these, and then I think the next thing for me to do is probably just to land on final placement here, with the idea that everything can expand out here in the future, will expand out here in the future, as much as we need it to. So give me a moment here, I'll hop in, land on placement, and connect everything up. All right, well, I think that works. Again, we will expand out in this direction each of these modules when, not if, we need to increase them. This brine producer will handle 4 of these chem plant 2s. So if we more than double this, then we will need to get a second one of these in here, probably move it around this way. But I didn't want to put it out this way to start because I wasn't sure if we would expand the train station at all. And wouldn't you know it, I did immediately decide to expand it. I was looking at how awkward it would be to run a pipe out this way. And then I realized, like, this is already a bit of a mess. I kind of want to change this to a drop-off station now, more than anything else. I think we're just going to try our water on the rail model here as well. So I'm going to clean up that little bit here. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We'll throw this onto the Silicon Ridge network. Is that going to be sufficient? I think it will be. Let's take a quick look here. Now we will need our turbine train network for the fuel gas, and it'd be better, yeah, and well, salt we have locally. At any rate, I think we're gonna do the turbine train network and the local network each for now. So I think the move will be to let this all get built, and we'll of course need to actually get the, the mining operation up and running. So maybe that's what we tackle next. All right, so here's the actual extraction, the mine itself. As you can see, it's pretty tight. Now we're going to give ourselves more room to work once we start pulling stuff out of the ground and then dumping it locally. We're going to dump our rock and dirt here to try to make more space here. But there's barely enough room for us to get a train loop in here with a solidly sized station. And of course, we also need a sizable ore sorting plant, and we'll connect all of these up, but the idea will be quite simply to send the bauxite out and everything else gets dumped into the ocean. It's going to be awkward for a minute or 3 here for sure. It's also across a bridge, and there's not really room to build a large tier 3 vehicle depot out here. So I think we're going to do what we did and are still doing with gold. Same issue, right? And we'll just use these normal sized excavators for now. And I think that'll be all right. Eventually, if and when we need to, we can always upgrade them locally once we can fit a higher tier vehicle depot. So this is the plan. The very funny thing about this is there's actually not enough room even to get a crossing in here properly for these tracks. So this is what it'll look like, but we actually are going to have to not build all of the tracks until we have all of the vehicles on the other side here. Again, longer term, we're going to have more space to build. We'll actually make this, more reasonable, but this is how it's going to have to start out. So let me connect up these belts and then we'll build the parts that we can for now. All right, we'll let that work for now. I don't want to extend this automatically just yet, but we will probably have to do it at least once or twice. I also ended up, actually now that I think about it, we can't build this just yet either, but I think we're going to end up having to put it all on one belt and then dump it. We obviously don't have the room to sort out rock versus dirt, so again, just as we did up here with gold, we're going to say, yeah, that's fine, everything goes. So hopefully this is manageable for, let's even clear out that part, for our trucks to construct. We'll come back and check in on it. I also think, for what it's worth, I want to build a long nuclear train. I think we're going to start with turbine trains just to get the whole thing moving, but that will be the plan eventually. We need to get some more infrastructure built, and one of the things that's a problem is we didn't leave ourselves room to add more extensions here, so we're gonna have to make that happen before we're actually able to get a full-length nuclear train, which, by the way, this is the single locomotive. Now, it's one hell of a locomotive, actually, so it does a lot of work, but this is the minimum amount that you can do. So it's already quite a good amount of length before you get a single train car in. We could fit 4, but not 5. So it would be better if we extended our depot first. So this is the mining end setup. We have to find a path from here out to here. The nice thing about it being a single dedicated line is it can be bidirectional, except for this loop here. And I think we will, I've set this off to the side, but I think we'll just slot this in here so that our amphibious vehicles can still use this as an entrance exit. But let's instantly build that. And then yeah, I think we just cut across here. It's a little awkward. I kind of wanted to get some height, but the problem with electric tracks, oh my gosh, you really have to go all the way up, and it's hard to turn and gain all the elevation here just to drop it again. So I think we'll be okay with just cutting across. I do wonder if it makes sense to move this waiting bay somewhere else. We put it here because it was out of the way, and now suddenly that's not the case anymore, but so be it. I think this is a fine location for the bridge, and it'll take a second to build, so I kind of want to get that in motion, but let's at least connect up the tracks here first so that we are certain that it does work. I'm going to hop in and connect those tracks. All right, I think that's enough to start. Fun little elevation gain over here. I suppose we could flatten it, but I don't really care to prioritize that just yet. We'll get to it soon enough, I'm sure. We do need to get some vehicles out here, though. So let's see. Can we take any of these realistically? Or do we need to preserve this throughput? We've got a few guys waiting. Looks like we could probably take 2 of these excavators and their corresponding trucks without too much trouble. So I think we're going to do it. So that should work. Let's go ahead and get that quick built so that they come out here. And we might as well tell them to get started. There's going to be plenty of work to be done here. Start with that, I guess. I don't know. Why not? Cool. So that's a matter of time. So still we'll want to relocate this probably and connect up to rail out through here. But I actually think I'm comfortable building the rest of this track as well, now that I'm looking at it. So let's do all of this. Let's say to here. I don't know what this connection will look like just yet, but that is hopefully a good enough start for all the construction that we're going to need to do. Our vehicles are immediately rather busy. You know what else is funny? We are probably going to need more workers. We just accidentally had 1,000 extra from our settlement transition and growing into the new excess of housing. I think it's time to turn off this disabled growth and try to fill in that last 350. I'm also realizing, taking a peek out here, that I didn't set up the connection yet for the graphite in. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll just do it up on level 2. Actually went up to level 3, just given the extra layer of stuff we have in the way there. I think that's everybody, though. Yeah, all right, good. So all of our connections are built here. You know what we didn't do, though, is the work over here for our red mud processing. Last step in the process, so it's not super urgent, but we could start producing acid at least. So let's do that. It'll take the pressure off the sulfur here as well a little bit. So let me take care of that too. All right, well, I think that should hopefully get us able to process red mud out here. And I think given how much friggin' unity we have, let's help a little bit with that. At least get all of this acid production spun up and saturated, take a little bit of pressure off all this sulfur. So hopefully that solves it, but we may have to do more on that front. Let's find out. So I was looking at this and I was like, oh, is this a great spot for our first new ramp version? And then I realized, no, it's a combination of too wide and has an entrance spot that will not work for us here. So if we tried to replace this 1-to-1, right, we clip the tracks and it's a little bit wider, then we'll fit over here without some significant rework. So anyway, if we'd had access to this tool, I would have done this in a way where it did work, but I don't know that I want to redo it now just to show how it could work. It's not so different. All right, I'm going to try to speed some of this up with Unity. Again, just given how much we're sitting on and how much our trucks are being slow right now. But I'll come back to you when we have a meaningful update. That won't be a problem, will it? Might need to fire the architect here. They're on their way, slowly but surely. So something I do want to change. Out here, right, we went back and forth between big buffers, small buffers. We want small buffers for our consumer goods, basically, and large buffers for everything else, except for chlorine and filter media. And the problem is, we don't get a train to run until this second one is empty, unfortunately. And that means that we spend a good amount of time without, for example, chlorine, or it's also happened with filter media. So I think what we're going to do is make both of these this size storage. So it'll mean extending the station a little bit out here. What we'll probably do is literally just take these, the chlorine one, move it over, double it up here, and use this extra space for consolidated filter media. So I want to do this on this settlement, that settlement, and then we'll use that model for all settlements going forward. The issue, of course, is that it makes our Unity a little bit stop and go. I will say, actually, one of the cool things in 4.2 is this is no longer a binary thing. Apparently it ticks up and down, so if you have an intermittent blip in supply, it doesn't suddenly crater you, and it's a little bit more, I think, forgiving. But it also means that by the time I notice, I need to update my heuristic, because by the time I notice that our Unity is dropped, it means it's really dropped. So trade-offs. I just need to get used to it. So I'm going to make those changes here real quick. All right, so hopefully that triggers trains to run a little bit sooner and we don't have this intermittent nature. Checking in everywhere else, though, we are pretty much built except for this bridge. And that includes, I think, out here. Yeah, so we are... Are we starting to mine? I think we might be. Why is there gold? Oh no. One of these trucks came out here with gold on it, didn't it? Or somebody did. There shouldn't be gold out here. At any rate, doesn't matter. Clear it out. So hopefully, does that mean we even have, yeah, our first little bits of bauxite are in a train station. It also means that these guys are behind the line, so to speak, so I think it's okay to bring this part of the construction back. Ooh, it's a tight one. Go to there, then here, there we go, and come across. So there's that, and let's get the landfill one built as well. Nice to do that without the mining designations in the way, but that's life. I can mostly see it. There we go. So now that they're tucked in the corner, this is officially functional, or it will be once we have a train and a bridge and this connection. I've been punting on this because, I don't know, built it up in my head that moving this is a whole thing. So let's distract ourselves further by solving a different problem instead, which is we need longer train. So honestly, I mean, we could get 2 of these in here without reworking this zone entirely. That might be good enough for now, which just means we sort of remove this idea as a road. And yeah, I think we're gonna call that sufficient for now. We do still want this like ability for trucks to come through here, but I don't want to call that a road, which is a purely aesthetic designation right now, but an important one nevertheless. So let's just say actually road ends here. And so therefore what we need is this all the way to here, and this to here, plus our favorite little corner dot right there as the cherry on top. Cool. Now with this size, can we do hopefully even more than that? So we can do 8. That's going to be a start. And we'll say new line, and this is going to be a dedicated line for sure. So of course we're going to start out here, hoover up all the bauxite we can, and then come out here and drop it all off. So the cool thing about the nuclear train, so we'll call this the nuclear bauxite supply. I know we don't call anything else by its train fuel source. Well, that's not true. We have the turbine train network, but we're definitely going to advertise the fact that it's nuclear here. Suppose we should use the bauxite icon, though, unfortunately. Alas. So, only has 1 stop. Well, that's not true. At any rate, so what we also need to do is get a nuclear refueling module, actually, in one of these 2 stations, and it's not going to be that one. There's no room. So we're going to place it here. Nuclear trains require a specific fuel module here, and there it is. As you can see, it's quite significant. Now, what comes in and out of this? Well, would you look at that? We need to supply with uranium rods, and we have to take spent fuel out. So maybe, do we actually want our nuclear train to occasionally come over here for fuel? Or are we comfortable running that over here by truck on occasion? I think we are, at least for now. When we end up redoing the nuke setup in the relatively near future, once we hit the FBR tech, really not that far into the future out here, we'll probably make sure that everything out here ends up on rail, including, by the way, this supply. I suppose we could try a tiny nuke train for spent fuel. That's a radiation bomb, though. It's not shielded, unfortunately, I don't think. Well, we could find out. At any rate, there's a lot of work to be done in this area, so all that to say, this might just be a temporary thing. But we don't need a ton of this stuff, and I think we can supply it by truck. Let's try. I've just never used the nuke train before, so we'll see how it goes. The cool thing, though, is how long it lasts. That's a pretty compelling part of the value prop of one of these trains. So one of these guys uses 0.12 uranium rods per minute. Just as a comparison, out here we use 2 uranium rods per minute to make all of our 120 megawatts of power. So and we have no problem supplying that, right? So it's really not so big a deal. And to make sure that this is accessible, I wonder, can trucks directly actually access this, or do we need to put storages out here? Not sure, but I will keep you updated one way or another if we do. All right, so we're gonna relocate this waiting bay over to this section right next to the other smaller, shorter waiting bay. This, by the way, is my visual reminder that I want to centralize gold production. I actually think it might be in this area. At any rate, I'm not going to let the future potential for this to be in this area keep us from just building some waiting bay tracks. It's really not so big a deal. So I'm going to ask our trucks to clean all of this up, and then make sure to assign those new waiting bays as the proper ones for this network. And then once this is all cleaned up, we will transition to making this corner here shortly. Oh man, you know what I did not think about out here is how these trucks are going to refuel. So I think what we need is actually a hydrogen and diesel drop off over here that runs a pipe over to something over here that they can access, that we're going to have to Unity build. Oh my gosh. All right, watch this. Well, yeah, this is very silly and also very temporary, so don't worry. But yeah, we're going to have trucks have to manually refuel these 2 drop-offs because they can reach that from the end of this bridge, and then that'll flow via pipe out here. We're going to have to build these with Unity, and I don't have any right now. I spent all 500 or whatever it was we were sitting on earlier, but it'll have to do eventually once this bounces back. Mostly it's this water still waiting on the chlorine drop-offs that have actually happened here at least, and yeah, this is just about there, but we are gonna tick up over time. And the cool thing here, right, is that water is part of our combo bonus, so unless we have water, we don't get the bonus. Not just from water, we don't get the bonus from the other things we're providing, so it should bounce back in a pretty meaningful way here shortly, although this will apparently require more. What's going on? Nope, we've just gotten here in the nick of time, and we see now, hopefully, this going down. And there you go, this going up. We probably have a few contract ships that have been waiting for a chunk of Unity to, go, which is not what you want. But once that's all shaken out, hopefully we will be back, very much so, in the black. And it looks like we are well on our way. So, all right, with that done then, let's get this built. Maybe even out here too. Cool. Let's see if this solves our issue. All right, the new bridge is complete. And I gotta say, it looks pretty good. I like it here as a little aesthetic complement to the larger cable-stayed bridge that we've obviously had here for quite some time. A new bridge needs a dedication to a new channel member, though. And wouldn't you know it, Zemobius, aka Feudal Raptor, has come through for us. So Feudal is an OG around these parts and part of our wonderful mod team. So he's already been a supporter of the channel in a lot of ways for a long time. A very heartfelt thank you, Feudal, for everything you do to help make this possible. And so, welcome to Feudal Raptor Bridge. I'm glad that Feudal gets the nuclear bridge. It's a pretty fitting, I think, special cherry on top dedication. As always, thank you to all of our channel members and supporters in their various forms. Besides 4.2 dropping, the other thing that's happened between episodes actually is that the channel has just crossed 3,000 subscribers, which is a really cool milestone and one I'm not sure I expected to hit this year. So it's pretty cool to be hitting it in July. Very fun. Thank you all again for your continued support and enthusiasm. Is what motivates me to keep the channel going. And so, perhaps to celebrate that, let's follow the maiden voyage of the nuclear train, shall we? Yeah, that's quite a long train. Took a second actually for the traffic to clear enough for him to be able to make it all the way through without clogging up intersections, I guess. But it is capable of holding, what? Probably, yeah, almost 4K bauxite. So as it loads up here, and our very busy little finally refueled excavator and truck team out here has got all of that piled up, but I don't know that they're going to be able to keep up with it to run constantly, which is fine. We're not going to consume enough to have this thing run constantly. But when it does run, it will run full. How about that? That's pretty cool to watch wind its way across the base, right? Long train, very long train. And I think this loop is long enough for it to turn around cleanly. I had hoped and still plan maybe in the longer run to extend this if possible. So we may have to extend the loop if we do, but it works for now. This locomotive has just incredible power. So it can drag these full 8x full tier 2 wagons without much problem at all. It can even handle all the tight turns and winding of this path. So it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool. And I suppose also, speaking of said train, yeah, in order to actually get the fuel processed out here, we are going to have to go ahead and build a bit of a drop-off. We'll do this at least for now manually via trucks. And then same thing here, we're going to at least store the spent fuel in here, and then when there's enough of a pile, ask a truck to run it quickly across to our reprocessing facility. So let's get that built so that in like 6 years, when this train does finally need refueled, because, you know, it doesn't take much to do a route, and he's going to be sitting idle at that train station a good amount of the time. This won't be running constantly. We don't pull enough out of the ground and won't consume enough over here on the aluminum side to really justify that. But this, once power gets itself sorted, should all be running at top speed now. So the way this will work, everything should probably flow through. We have everything supply-wise that we need in here already. So we'll fill up the aluminum storage for export first, and then once that's all backed up, we'll start to overflow, I would imagine working backwards, right? A bit of excess molten, which we're not going to consume until we have titanium. So once that's backed up, then we'll have excess alumina sent out over here. So it'll take quite some time, I think, to get all of that spun up, but we don't need it, either of those two, for quite some time. And we will use the aluminum in relatively short order, but I suppose we probably need to get ourselves an export warehouse here and over on St. Charles. So maybe that's the next thing we do. So, as usual, right, this is our same model as before. We are simply bringing in on the Silicon Ridge network with these shorter shuttle trains any aluminum that we produce over here, right? So this export station will send aluminum out, and over here we will pull it in. And then on this side of the transshipment setup, our export network, these larger, longer flatbed trains, will take anything that's piled up here and try to push it out over here to St. Charles. So we will need to set up a receiving warehouse over here that also then deposits it onto the local network here. Of course, that's assuming, I think that's a fair assumption, but it is assuming that we are going to consume the aluminum over here. We'll get to that in a little bit, but this is the first step, I think, pretty much no matter what. I don't think we want to be exporting all of it anytime we need it from this particular factory. So I think we're going to sit here and watch the first bits come in, actually. Although this should probably actually say aluminum on it, huh? There we go. But we are making our way through here, right? We are grinding, we are producing hydrated alumina, we are dehydrating said alumina, and it is hopefully passing very soon. Nope, we have our priority balancer not split out, but we are, there we go, receiving some of it over here at least with graphite to turn to molten, and there it is. There's our first bits of aluminum. Very cool. So as you can see, power is flickering a little bit here. These are chunky boys that require quite a bit of electricity. I've turned the oil power plant back on at least for a moment, at least for a bit, and it's, I don't know, probably gonna require a bit of troubleshooting, but we do need a little bit of extra power here now that we have increased our consumption in this area for sure. This is what, 16, these are each one, so 18 and change when you consider all of the various train stations and such. So this is a not insignificant factory from a power consumption perspective. All right, well, we've got aluminum coming off the line here. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm traveling this week. I'm going to a music festival with some friends over the weekend, actually, so I'm not going to be able to get another traditional full-length episode out this week. That episode would have started with composite panel production and hopefully even launching our first rocket. I think we have everything we need. It's honestly just a matter of building up the aluminum supply here, which admittedly will take a moment. So I'd been figuring I'd only put out this episode this week, but maybe instead I'll throw together a shorter episode for Friday that's mostly aesthetics and tweaks around the base while just waiting for aluminum to build up. That way we can hit the ground running with a proper rocket building episode next week. It'll definitely be a bridge, but at the same time that would make it manageable for me workload-wise. There will still be something in your feed for Friday, and of course we'll still be advancing the plot here. I promise I'll take a proper vacation eventually, but I see a way to keep things running this week. So hope that sounds good to you. Either way though, that's going to be all for me for today. So until the next one, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.